Yeah, even the word pleasure, it's still taboo in our culture.
There's the guilt associated with it, right?
Well,
like
yeah.
if I'm enjoying pleasure, am I worth receiving it?
Welcome to the One Day at a Time podcast, where we take things one day at a time. Tune in the studio, we have Noorin and Dian.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the studio. Okay, so before we begin, maybe we can do a quick introduction about yourselves, what you do, what you're passionate about, and stuff like that.
Sure. Do you want to go first or?
Yeah, maybe Dian, you can go first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dian. And thanks for inviting me to this podcast.
Thank you for coming down.
Yeah, and I'm my background. I'm an art therapist. When I first started my therapy career, I started with art therapy and mental health. So I'm a registered art therapist, and then I retrained myself to become a sex therapist, and then adding a new qualification to my pot, which is sex coaching. So I combine all those three into my current practice as a sex therapist now. So that's my main focus now.
Right. Okay. Actually, let's take a pause there. What exactly is art therapy?
Oh, art therapy. I haven't revised that for a long time.
Right.
It's been a while. No, it's been a while since someone asking me that.
Right. So,
it's a good question.
Yeah. When does someone go for art therapy?
Art therapy. Okay, one of my mentor gave a beautiful description of what art therapy. Art therapy is it's a therapeutic technique that gives forms to feelings.
Like visual representation.
Yeah, with because I do visual art as my main basic for art therapy. So we use this technique like making art, painting, collaging, sculpturing as well sometimes. So we use various different form of arts to express things that are very difficult. Which I do find it very useful when I incorporate that into my work as a sex therapist, because quite often there's a lot of difficult things, difficult feeling, to process.
Right.
When it comes to things like sexual shame, sexual trauma as well. So art can be a very powerful form to express that.
I see. Okay, how about you, Noorin?
I'm Noorin. I am the founder and writer behind shyandcurious.com. Honestly, it's my blog where I kind of explore topics about love and sex and ends up being mostly my dating stories. But my day job is I'm also the marketing manager at Litzworks, which is a distributor and retailer for sex toys. So that's how we're good friends.
Nice. Actually, how did you two meet?
Yeah, pretty much true.
How did we meet?
Through Melody.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you want to tell that story? Or?
Yeah, you can tell that story too.
So as distributors, we work with a lot of global brands in sexual wellness, like Womanizer, WeVibe, Lelo. And one of the brands reached out to me saying that there's this lovely woman, Dian, who's doing also an interview or something, right?
Yes, I did an interview with CNA on Orgasm Gap.
Yeah, and she needed some visual props. So that's how we got connected.
Is the sexual wellness industry in Singapore very small? Like everybody kind of know each other, or is it still very like diverse and sparse?
Pretty much, I would say. I mean, Singapore itself is tiny, right?
Yeah.
So, and especially in an industry like ours, where the type of people involved are very passionate and so we kind of know of each other. Some of us are connected, but otherwise, there's a few different players in the field as well.
I see.
It is a growing community as well.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, if we include my other colleagues like a pelvic health physio or gynae, urologist.
Right. Okay.
And there's a lot more of us. Sex coaches, sexologists, sex therapists who now training and then bring their craft to Asia and Singapore. So it is an exciting and growing field.
Right.
It's a lot of fun, but it is still work. It's still work.
Right. So let's get back to that later about the different intricacies of the different roles lah. Because you mentioned about like sexologists, like sex wellness therapists. So I'm sure like it's quite intricate. Like the roles that every professional play in the sexual wellness industry is slightly different. But I think the point of us having this conversation today is to kind of bring a little bit more awareness and make people, not make people, but allow people to be a little bit more comfortable to share and talk about sexual wellness, right?
Sure.
Because I'm sure both of you being in the industry, you will maybe experience it a lot more than normal people, which is that sexual wellness or anything that is related to the word sex is a very big taboo in the Asian kind of culture, right? Especially so in Singapore, because it's so we are very controlled. Like our upbringing, education system is very taught us to not say these kind of things because it can be embarrassing. It can make people feel uncomfortable and things like that. And therefore, a lot of people who might be facing certain things in sexual wellness, they keep it to themselves, right? Which is I guess very similar to other aspects of mental health as well.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
Right.
That's so true. There's still a lot of stigma.
Right. Do
And
you
it's
feel
still
like
taboo as well?
Yeah, it's
because
still, right?
culturally it's very taboo. So is this what bring you? Well, is this all the idea behind having us here?
Yeah,
for
I
you?
think so. I think it's also that most people don't really think to talk about it, or rather, like maybe someone might be facing, maybe someone has questions, but they never ever get the questions answered because it's so taboo that they don't even search for it. Like you have your blog and I'm sure people read what you have to say, but some people might not come across it, right? So I think it's important to kind of maybe
normalize it.
Yeah, right.
Normalizing the conversation.
Or rather, actually, I have a question now we are talking about this, which is that do you feel, having been in this industry for a while, do you feel like it is changing? Because the people, younger people nowadays, they are a little bit more open lah, right? Like in the past, they maybe 10, 20 years ago, it's still very closed off, right? But with social media, people are talking about all sorts of things, ranging from sexual wellness to like food to everything. Do you feel like because of that, the sexual wellness industry has kind of become a little bit more open compared to the past?
It's interesting. It's both sides of the coin. So it's changing in the way that there's a lot more information, and it's good. People are more open up to the different ideas around sexuality, and there are more good information out there. But at the same time, the old persistent negative messages and persistent myth also still out there and now have its own exposure through social media. So we have two competing. One is the misinformation of media around sex, and one is a really good education around sex. And so we have to be really careful and in terms of where do we get this information from.
I agree with Dian, and especially because I guess my role is in terms of normalizing taboo topics, right?
Right.
And I play a part in both as a content creator but also in the business side of things. So and it's funny you mentioned the being afraid to search, because the tagline for Shy and Curious is actually exploring sex and love without hiding your Google search.
Okay.
Shy and Curious, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's true that it seems like there's a bit more openness, especially during COVID. I think people are stuck indoors. Globally, sex toy industry did super well because we're all stuck indoors.
Right.
And a lot more smaller brands and also the educators, advocates, they came up during this time. But if you're asking about like general public, still kind of tricky.
Would you actually say that your job as a marketing manager for a product that is relatively taboo, right, is very interesting and has different challenges from other types of products that is, I guess, more widely accepted, like a gadget or a phone type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely marketing sex toys is not for everyone. Not for everyone. It's
Not for the faint-hearted.
yes, because like you do have to love the product and the brands and the values involved and just you have to keep your mind on the bigger picture, which is that we're here to normalize pleasure, so that people they don't feel repressed or it helps them out with just relationships and intimacy as usual, but also
Even the word pleasure, it's still taboo in our culture.
there's the guilt associated with it, right?
Well,
like
yeah.
if I'm enjoying pleasure, am I worth receiving it? Or like should I even think about pleasure when there's like what I find with my friends, like even our age, is that it's always function and over pleasure, or like your duty over all of that. I'm kind of rambling offside, but
But why do you think that is so? Why do you think like even a very non-taboo word like pleasure is taboo in our culture?
I think with Singapore culture emphasizes on really hard work, meritocracy, hard work. There's no room for
Pleasure.
pleasure.
there's no room for fun.
Because if you play, we all grow up with going to tuition center versus
Playgrounds.
playgrounds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Can we spend a long time playing? And play is part of that. Having pleasure. So then culturally itself, there is this negative connotation around pleasure.
Like you
even
can't
stuff that we eat.
Yeah,
They
like
call it
you
guilty
can,
pleasure.
You can enjoy yourself without putting the work in, right? Yeah, you're not given that permission to like to explore, and that's what we try to do in our roles.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, talking about roles, just now I think Dian also mentioned like a sexologist, sexual coach or sexual wellness coaches, and like for you, you are a sex therapist, right? And of course, for Noorin, you are basically involved in the product side of the industry as well as sharing your opinions with your blog. So out of all these, or rather, what are the different roles, common roles and professions within the sexual wellness industry? And what exactly is the difference in what they do, especially for the therapy side of thing, right? What's the difference between a sex coach, a sexologist,
That's a good question. So sexologists come from this term of sexology. And in general, sexology is a term of scientific study of human sexuality, including human behavior and human needs around sex. And the people who study it are being referred to as sexologists. And some sexologists choose to expand their career as sex therapists. Some goes on to become coach, researcher, educator, or even public policy advocacy as well. Yeah. Or some choose to become a writer as well. Some of my colleagues who study at my sex coaching education, they choose to become a writer, for example. There's a difference between coaches and therapists. So sex coach may have different training, some include sexology, and they don't have to be a mental health specialist or a licensed professional, and usually can be helpful to engage in sex coach if you really have a clear idea about what you want out of the sex coaching session. So, for example, if you want to know how to pleasure yourself, or if you are keen to empowering yourself, sex education, sex coaching can be a good avenue for it. And they tend to focus more on immediate, short-term goal. And whereas with sex therapists, usually we have a background like in mental health professional. So like psychologists, counseling, and usually they need to have master degree training. And they're bound by their regulating body professional and ethics as well. And so our approach is very similar to what psychologists or therapists approach. We have assessment session, 1 or 2 session assessment, and then we develop treatment plan, and we use that assessment to find a way to address your symptoms and also underlying challenges that you are facing. So it's very important that you do your research on sex therapist or coach credential before embarking on the session with them. So I think it's important to be educated on that as well. Some of the sex therapy goals may include things like anxiety, coping with anxiety during sex, addressing sexual disorder, life stages, like now you become a parent, what can we do about it? Or going through menopause, especially like someone our age, low sexual desire, mismatched libido. So somewhat sex coach and sex therapist, the role can be overlapping. But depending on the way we train, but with sex therapists, for example, we are trained to address, because sexual issue is not just in the head. It's biopsychosocial, meaning it involves biological, psychological, relationship, society, or even society, religious belief. So there's a lot of layers around that. So because of that intricacy and that different factor, don't be surprised if, for example, I'll recommend my client, hey, can you please see my colleague who's pelvic health physiotherapist, specializes in pelvic health, or gynae. Or sometimes I refer my clients, hey, maybe it's a good idea to help you with your mental health and see psychiatrists or see psychologists separately, so we can work together, and even relationship therapists as well. So that's some of the player.
It takes like a whole village.
Yeah, it does.
It does,
including sometimes I send my clients to, hey, if you want to explore being playful, and so sex toy retailers, workshops can be also useful avenue to open up yourself.
Right. So there are actually quite a little bit of overlaps between every single sexual wellness profession, right? Some of them focus a little bit more on the bio part of things, like for example, your pelvic health specialist and your gynae. But some of them focus a little bit more on maybe the social aspect, and some of them focus a little bit more on the psychological aspect, but they still have to work hand in hand, right, in order for this whole thing to work lah.
Yeah, so it's like a kampong,
Right.
The kampong of sexual wellness that taking care of each other.
Okay, so I guess what I'm quite curious to know is also when should someone consider seeking assistance, right? In whether from a sexual coach, from a physical product, right, or a like pelvic health specialist. Like when can someone decide, like, okay, you know what, something is maybe not too right. Like I need to seek help, right? For example, if you like tore something, you will need to go and a physio, right? But that's quite obvious lah, because you obviously feel the tear, the muscle tear, right? So in sexual wellness, right, when should someone seek assistance? Because I don't really want to use the word help, because it's not that sometimes there's anything wrong, but you just want to make things better lah. Right. Yes. So when should someone seek, like assistance?
Yeah, so if sex proven to be painful, if we're talking things like penetration is painful for women, for girls, it's really good to consider our colleagues such as pelvic health physio. It has to be a specialist physio that specializes in pelvic health, because they're really trained to understand the muscle, the nerve, the functional aspect of the pelvic,
the bio part,
the bio part, or even go to see a sexual health doctor, right? If you worry about unprotected sex, you see a doctor. Yeah, which is that's on the health medical part. Yeah. And if the issue it's about anxiety, all the psychological concern, it's good to see sex therapists. And if the issue is about not issue, if it's
I would say anytime. You can visit us anytime. I mean, I'm kidding, but in general, because we do encourage people to see toys as tools, not replacements. Because I think there's still a bit of misconception that someone who uses toys mean they can't get a partner in real life, or their partner isn't satisfying them, right? Of course, we have some customers who come in because they want a bit more spice behind closed doors. But we also tend to just keep using this word, but normalize it by you're really exploring yourself. So because the depiction in media is sometimes a bit
skewed.
A bit skewed, right? So especially for female pleasure, you don't really see much of it. And you see it more like in a jokey, funny way, guys, wank off, all of that.
Right.
But when it comes to toys, we do encourage people to it's not just like phallic dildos, or it's also different type of, we call them pleasure tools sometimes, for different parts, different sensory play. There's also sometimes a misconception that there's kinks like, BDSM, that's scary. But it could be something as simple as like a blindfold.
If you want to enhance, if you want to enhance your sex life, adding spice. Because we all thrive from introducing novelty in our life. That gets things exciting. And so
exactly, novelty.
Yeah,
novelty
the
is a
novelty
keyword.
is also important.
Novelty,
And then
playing, playing and exploring. Yeah.
So if that, then sexual wellness retailer workshop. There's also workshop that in Singapore.
Yeah, there's like interesting things like we work together with a shibari instructor, for example, where he teaches shibari, which is the art of rope tying, and the idea of restraints, but it's also an art form in itself. So sometimes there's also always this negative connotation to a kink, for example, but it's really about, if anything, you actually learn a lot about communication, being open and transparent, and talking about boundaries, being safe, consent, huge part. So I just find that sometimes actually in our world, there's a lot of talking and a lot of understanding your partner's needs, your own needs, actually. So always start with you first, because once you know what you like, what you don't like, hard limits, soft limits, and that's how you're also able to communicate with your partner.
The whole idea of sexual wellness is a little bit more physical for many people, right? Because it's a physical activity per se, right? But sex and things like your relationship with your partner is also very intertwined, right? Like during dating and after marriage and things like that. For how do professionals like yourselves, right, kind of navigate that together with your clients? Because it's not just about the physical act of doing things.
It's interesting you say it's just about physical. There's another good myth, because like I say, sex is very
biopsychosocial.
Yeah, biopsychosocial. There's this research, there's this seminal research that investigate, I think they discover around 237 reasons why people have sex.
237. Okay.
And the majority of the component of that research is really about psychological aspect of it. The needs for intimacy, the needs for closeness, the needs for safety.
Right.
Then when we talk about safety, then we talk about touches and on consent, attachment, conversation. And another myth, usually we always, because how the media portrays sex, we don't do a lot of talking around sex, but that's not true. to have a good sex, you need to have that open conversation around it, ideally before the sex happens.
Right.
So yeah, there's actually sex is beyond physical aspect of it. Yeah.
I agree. I think it starts in your mind, actually. Well, yeah, because
What's between the
what's between the ears, right? So
it's not just what's between the legs.
Yeah. So I see that's the fantasy aspect, that's the imagination. But even during sex, so for example, if someone feels uncomfortable or they're worried about how they look, right, and they're self-conscious, that kind of starts also shutting down like other parts, because then you don't feel so desirable, or you feel nervous or sadly, which is when I was much younger and I didn't know myself as well, I would let certain things slip through, which actually, if I look back, was against my boundary. Maybe I didn't feel like having sex that day, but I feel bad because it's been a while, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it does start in mind, not just...
Or even a body image issue.
Yes,
when we feel insecure about our body, it can also impact, and we're so anxious around our body, how we look. That can impact...
and even the relationship,
our satisfaction.
Because if you're not feeling 100% with your partner,
you don't feel safe.
You don't feel safe. You kind of second guess things, I think.
Right. So how would you say? Because like you said, like sex is a minimum 2 people activity, right? Sometimes one, right? But how would you maybe advise or encourage someone to bring it up with their partner? Because, like in public, of course, it's still very taboo, right?
Yep.
But with your partner, it's something that people should talk about, right? Like, what are maybe some of the insecurities that you have when like when you mentioned body image issues and things like that? How would someone bring it up to their partner? Because I would imagine, right, that for most Asian people, especially in Singapore, the reaction would be like, we talk another time, or like we kind of thing, right? And you don't want to come across as too adamant about, okay, we've got to talk about this now, right? When maybe your partner is not ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, when you're driving and play the podcast, and then you can start, One Day at a Time has this new podcast. Let's listen to this, right? And then maybe use that as a conversation starter.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
Or even movie.
Yes.
Certain movie, you watch movie together and you want to introduce certain things, and you can use the movie as an inspiration, because they don't have to be crude. A lot of good movie out there.
Another technique that not me, but some of my friends use is because they'll use me. They're like, I was just having a conversation with a friend, and she was saying that she hasn't come with a partner. What do you think, or what should I, and kind of just get the conversation rolling.
Right.
Because I think for us, we have the privilege of being in the industry, so talking like this is kind of normal for us, right? But,
because it becomes a normalized practice.
Yeah, and we're also a little older, so we're like, we've had the life experience. But for someone younger, I can understand how scary it might be, especially if it's a new relationship and you don't feel like rocking the boat too much, right? So you can always...
Do you have it in your blog? Do you write something? How to... Is that...
I don't remember. I've written a lot of...
Right,
okay,
too many things.
I'm just trying to...
No, I did do something about how to have difficult conversations. Yeah. But I wrote that a long time that I don't remember what I put in. But I did remember that it was...
But I want to say it is difficult.
Yeah, it is.
It is difficult. It's not easy.
Of course, like any other topic that is difficult, right?
No, because we're not encouraged, or we're not taught how to even do it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the media also never show that there's, before the act happens, the media never show there's a lot of conversation behind that.
Yeah. And also this is a one topic that comes with shame.
Yes.
So it's scary to get the conversation.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because often as a young girl or younger girl, right? if you want to initiate that conversation,
Yeah.
you'll probably be worried about, okay, what do they think of me?
Yeah.
Am I
Right.
slutty, or am I
Right,
promiscuous?
Yeah, promiscuous.
Am I too manly?
Yeah,
you know?
and then that becomes such a stigma, right?
yeah,
Right.
To
exactly.
even talk about that.
Yeah. So we would
Yeah.
say, basically, our advice would be, if you're nervous to bring it up, just use a softer approach, like segue through
Right.
movies, conversation with friends, all of
Right.
that. But if you're confident enough, I would say, like Dian said, don't do it during sex, because you're also kind of overloaded with
Right.
emotions
Right,
and,
right.
and lust, right? So
Right.
have the conversation either before or
after.
even after, because
Right.
also so after sex, and you can
The
share
aftercare.
the aftercare
Yeah.
part of things,
Right.
because people just think wham bam, thank you ma'am, but actually
Yeah.
the important part is the after, because
Yeah.
Right.
all your hormones and dopamine, everything so
Well, we
spiked
go
up.
to a restaurant and we
Yeah.
have appetizer.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
And
We also want to have
dessert.
have a nice closing to the
Yes.
meal and
Yeah.
taking care of
Yeah.
each other.
So actually, because forgot to study for this, but because the act itself does a lot of things to your body, right? So
Right.
you hit that spike, and then after that, once it's done, you tend to crash. And some people mistake that crash for being guilty or not feeling, it's a bit like a sugar crash, right? So that's also why aftercare is important, because you kind of want to seek comfort. You want to, oh, how was that for you? Is it good?
Right.
Just,
Oh, yeah.
just having ice cream together, like just staying in bed, cuddling, all of that fun stuff.
Right. And normalizing the conversing part also lah,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like nowadays with I guess social media and like our ability to have blogs like yours, the conversation can be started by professionals or people who are more passionate to share things like both of yourselves. I was just wondering,
Oh,
right?
and books. I forgot books.
Right, and
There are a
books.
lot
Yeah,
of good
yes.
books.
Yeah,
Yes.
forgot about those.
Yeah, there's this I call it Bible. If read this book called "Come as
You Are."
As You Are, Emily Nagoski's an excellent book. Demystify a lot of things.
Come as you are.
Yeah,
I think she
yeah.
has the revised edition now.
She has a revised, and she has a new book
Yes.
coming up called "Come Together."
So no, she's the textbook for
Yeah,
this
no,
industry.
she's like
Those are amazing
I
titles.
have a
Very
fan, I have a fan crush.
Yeah.
Come as you are and come together.
Yes, Emily.
Emily Nagoski.
Especially in Singapore, right? There, I guess on social media there are no real like restrictions per se, but we live in a country where there are a lot of media censorship, right? Do you not experience, especially for Noorin, like, because you're freaking marketing the product, right?
Yes.
So have you ever come across any difficulty in putting up like maybe advertisements, especially on mainstream media?
Of course.
Because it's like, hey, I got a marketing budget, but like platforms just turn you down because it's media censorship and
Well,
that sort of
actually,
thing.
so Meta doesn't even allow us to advertise. So there is restriction on that.
So
right at start.
it's not even just Singapore.
No, it's Meta itself. And,
right.
and like even global brands experience this. We get shadow ban, for example. So you don't know why your reach goes down, and then you look through and you see that, all of this has, gone against our guidelines. And it's not even nudity, sometimes it's education, sometimes it's we have to avoid anything phallic looking in our posts. I got flagged for showing a little bit more cleavage, for example. But you never know when exactly you'll get flagged, because you'll see all this.
Right.
Yeah, even
Quite-
sex educator around the world also spoke about
It's
this censorship.
difficult.
With
it's
the
difficult.
algorithm, and that's not in favor of good sex education. Yeah.
So to go around that, we do work with a lot of like content creators who are maybe more into talking about relationships per se, because also in Singapore it's tough to find someone openly talking about sex as content creators
Right.
to mainstream.
Right, because they might get shadow banned also, right? Because it's a
They do.
Yeah.
So we all do. So it's almost like a rite of passage. Like, oh, I got shadow banned. Yes, I'm doing something right.
Or is
right?
it like that?
Yeah. Exactly. So it is like recently we actually did work with a company, and because we had a new launch, and the toy itself didn't look phallic or like a toy itself. So our idea around it was just like, okay, just pass it to someone, and what do you think it looks like, or what do you think it does? And we have to rely on different forms, like maybe either comedy. It's not so in your face, like use this to we have to do it very subtly,
Subtle, yeah.
very very subtle.
right, which is, I think it requires a lot of creative thinking, right? Because you can't just basically run an ad on Facebook or TikTok or YouTube. It basically you just not get approved lah
Yes.
most of the time.
Yes, pretty
right?
You're not gonna get banned too, right?
I don't know.
You
We'll
can
see.
just be
We will see.
And then you can put, oh, we got shadow
Yeah,
ban.
we got shadow ban. Okay, I don't want to get shadow ban. Don't ban me. Yeah. But so that was something that I was very curious about because I've come from the media and marketing side of things myself, and on the way to the podcast, I was just thinking, shit, man, how do these people like come up with marketing strategies? Because most regular marketing strategies, like marketing is all about creativity, right? But the general techniques of marketing, just generally wouldn't really work too well for this industry because of the not just the stigma, but the platform's restrictions on what you can advertise and things like that. And it kind of forces you to be even more creative on how you can reach out to people, right? For example, these days, in the past, mental health, like things talking about anxiety and depression, it's not very normal. But these days, right, when you scroll through social media, you see all these like better help, like an online therapy or trauma specialist, whatever. So you see ads like that. But for like a sex therapist or like a sex product, like a
marketing.
It's a you can't do that lah. You can't just like, hey, I get a designer to make a nice thing, or like get a video person to make a nice video, and then you
Well, we still do all of those things that a normal marketer person does, but some things are a bit, we just can't touch them, like outdoor advertising, big no, billboards, MRT trains, no, right? So we are forced to be creative, and we're also very lucky in the sense where so my company, our retail arm is called ESG, and just because of the name itself and the branding, we can afford to be cheekier. So we have a really loyal group of customers too, and we just find ways to like, okay, let's work on this and add value. One of the fun things that we've done, which actually I'm so happy, is because it's a bit of my baby.
Nice.
But we do mystery sex toy testing.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes a brand will have a new product, like the one I mentioned. It's actually womanizer eggs, but because it is such a new product and new innovation, we decided, okay, let's recruit testers, right? So in exchange for a toy, they get to review it upon launch, and then after 2 weeks they can leave a review, and we encourage them to be honest, right? So if it didn't work for them, if it was too noisy or just wasn't great, then we asked them to leave that in, and we
like a mystery shopper.
Exactly. So the idea was from mystery shopping, right? And honestly, when I launched this, I was kind of nervous because I'm thinking, we only had like 10 toys, for example, right? And I wasn't even sure if there would be 10 signups because it's very private. And you'll review a restaurant, I don't know if you'll review a toy, but we were so excited when we were basically oversubscribed, and we had to like really narrow down. We had to add more. So that was, I think, something that we realized that at the end of the day, it's still word of mouth is the most powerful thing, right? So
in any industry, like
exactly,
in any
so
industry,
we'll still have the videos, we'll still have like the blog posts and everything. But at the end of the day, it's if someone uses a product and they feel safe and secure enough also with our service and everything. And they'll tell it to a friend, our job's kind of done. Yeah.
Right. It's just that the initial general outreach is a little bit tougher.
Yes.
But once you kind of you do great work, right? With either with the service or the product, then people recommend other people, just like how people recommend great food to friends.
I think culturally and around the world globally, we always have this. I'm just reflecting on how us culturally globally view sex.
Yeah.
It's there's always this polarity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Polarity between yes, we are curious, but the social construct also pull us to the shadow.
Yes.
Right.
Ooh, I like that word.
Yeah. So there's always this polarity. Yeah. I mean, it's true. Like globally, although we seem to be more open, but that's this recent move towards more conservatism. Also around the world. So it's an interesting space we are in right now.
Yeah, like even when I first started this joining this industry maybe 3 years ago now. And when I first came in, my friends were so concerned. They're like, "Are you sure you're gonna put your real name and your real face?"
Right.
It's about safety as well,
Yeah.
because
Right.
for example, like you as a content creator, right?
Yeah.
Because you write about sex openly, you talk about sex openly, people assume that you are
up for it.
but actually no.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's still that kind of culture and assumption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But on the flip side, if you do not, I guess, reveal who you are and you kind of write behind a facade or a brand, then the people who read it might not feel as relatable, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a very fine balance of...
Yes. For me, it was when I started the blog, it was a deliberate choice because the blog did come up because of my own personal story with my mom, my late mom, because she passed away from breast cancer. So her thing was that she actually had it inside for the longest time and was too ashamed and anxious to tell anyone, like not even her family, right? So
there's a lot of taboo, right?
A lot of taboo. So we only found out when she got warded into the hospital and she passed away like days later. But when I was there and I asked her, like, Mom, like why didn't you tell us? And she said it was her body and she's ashamed. Because I was raised as Muslim too, so that there is also that religious aspect to it. So when I started the blog, it was about being open and being vulnerable first. Because if I don't put my real face and I don't put my real name, how can I expect someone else to share their vulnerability with me, right? How would I expect them to tell me that, I have all these questions about sex. If I'm anonymous, sure, maybe it could help, but I do feel that you gotta practice what you preach.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in today to share about this topic and also to normalize having conversations about sex. And we keep saying the word sex. I hope we don't get banned. So if someone is curious to find out more, like more in depth about what you do and how maybe they could potentially work with you or connect with you, where can they find you online actually?
Ooh, you want to go first?
Yes, you can go to my website. It's www.nambani.com. It's NAMBANI. Or I have IG as well. It's Therapy with Nambani. I try to do more posting.
Awesome. Okay, so you can connect with Dian online. And how about you, Noorin?
So my blog is shyandcurious.com, but I'm a lot more active on Instagram as well. That is shyandcurious_com. And if you ever need toys, you can just DM me and I'll link you up. But the day job is horny.sg.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time on the One Day at a Time podcast. Peace.